I know the world is saying, well, look at the system, but I don't see any reason why they should say that the South African legal system is bad. I don't think there's any basis for that. If one reads reports, articles, legal journals, I don't believe one can ever find a situation where there's a massive criticism. I mean, criticism of our legal system. We're open to the world. Obviously, far, far more than the case was during the apartheid. And I think there we could have been seriously criticized. But even then, you had judges who came out very, very strongly in favor of human rights. I mean, South Africa's constitution has to be probably one of the best in the world. Going on, there is corruption. But again, people go to court. Even people at the highest level are charged. I mean, Zuma has himself been charged. So not many countries where the president would be charged for criminal matters. Well, the judge makes the final call on all legal issues, but on the factual aspects, all three, in other words, the judge and the two assessors, have got to make the final decision. When it's a legal issue, let's say whether a particular law applies, and I suppose one could argue the whole issue of self-defense, which is a legal issue, how to interpret that and whether it's been, the judge must make the final call with regard to whether he acted in self-defense or whether it's called putative self-defense, whether he genuinely, mistakenly believed that there was an intruder in the toilet. So the jury system, a judge plays more of a limited role. So that was outdated in South Africa, certainly in the 1960s. And I think, many people don't quite understand how a judge and two assessors can make the final call when you might have, more people on the jury making that decision, but they're not legally qualified. Well, I think to an extent, because you have more people so on the jury, so there may be so many more ways of looking at a particular case. But having said that, the jury aren't, they're not legally qualified to determine what evidence can be excluded, what is hearsay evidence, what evidence has been, unfairly obtained. For example, the forensic evidence, much has been made of all of that and of being improperly obtained and the crime scene having not been secured and the evidence may have been contaminated. So a jury might not understand all of the niceties of the law, jury. But then again, you've got more minds thinking about it, and if you have I think somebody might feel, well, I'm being judged by my peers. They understand what has happened to me. They may have had similar incidents themselves, or friends that found themselves in a similar situation. So juries can be more easily influenced, but then again, judges can also be influenced, even though they may like to say they're not. Also, I think it's an interesting debate as to why it hasn't been introduced. I think we've just got too used to it. And to kind of move into that system, you'd have to have a change in the law, change in the perception. I think everybody in South Africa has just got used to a judge and two assessors, or you might just have one judge and no assessors dealing with a murder case. So I think it's a debate that we kind of forgotten about in South Africa, and I think maybe it needs to be resurrected because these questions are being asked all the time. I can understand if you're dealing with a serious fraud matter or a commercial criminal matter or a tax matter, that the jury might not understand all the aspects of law. But this is simple. Who do you believe? Were there shots? How many shots were fired? Absolutely. Let me tell you, when you sit in court, I have a matter today, the guys came in, they took a lot of photographs, but they weren't photographing what was happening in court. You have a judge who interferes with your cross-examination. You have a judge who's kind of trying to, be bolshy and put you down. That's wrong. If that was all televised, they wouldn't do that. they wouldn't dare, because the world is looking and saying, hang on, that guy's not getting a fair trial. And so I think from that perspective, it's good that it allows it to be seen. The judge has to, quote, behave, unquote, him or herself in court. Many of them don't always, but the police also are now under the spotlight. Yeah. So maybe it would be a lesson to them to get their act together, to investigate properly. And as I say, also for the legal system to kind of make sure that it's run properly, they can present the evidence in the correct way, people are more prepared, more aware of what their responsibilities are, because they know the eyes of the world are on them. I don't feel that will be a problem, personally, appearing in front of cameras. I think, it places obviously a lot of pressure on one, but on the other hand, it makes you prepare properly and ensure that you ask the right questions and get to the point quickly. So I think from that perspective, it's a good thing. But bearing in mind, I think that it needs to be done with sensitivity, and there may be witnesses that should not be televised, either prosecution or defence witnesses. I think they need to realise that it's quite traumatic for witnesses to testify in a normal court where there are only a few people watching. So, one's right to your privacy, I think, needs to be protected. One must believe that she's, got a long track record. She's experienced not only as a judge, but in other fields, that she should then be objective. This seems to be her last case, and the world is looking at her. So I think more than your usual case, people actually seeing her delivering or having to deliver judgment eventually, she's going to be very, very cautious. And even though in the past maybe she's handed down heavy sentences, but maybe they were justified ruling. But I think pretty much she's going to be careful and make sure it doesn't come out as if she's predisposed to in cases involving gender violence. I think she's kept back, and she's only interfered when necessary. I think she's been nice to everybody, friendly to everybody, and just making sure that everything runs correctly. With regard to cell phone conversations between Reeva and Oscar, some of the discussions were regarded as sort of aggressive from Pistorius' angle. Other conversations were seen as loving, and I think not much must be made of that. And again, motive is not an element of the crime of murder. The ballistics, the firearm expert who testified, I think testified very well with regard to where the shots were grouped, which shot caused which injury to her, how soon after the shots were fired one after the other. So how's he going to get past all of that? And then also his own version, which is also, I feel, a problem. So I think he's going to have to do some very, very good response, or he's going to have to present some very, very good responses to what happened. Again, he's the only witness, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence out there from which these inferences can be drawn.